pressures and interest rate. And on September 1st, 1996, the Carolina Panthers spent 4 quarters raising it until the Falcons couldn't afford another first down. Welcome back to the Panthers 100. This is episode 6, Lamar Lathon, September 1st, 1996. Falcons at Panthers. Carolina wins 29-6. Today's idea, pressures and interest rate. And I'm documenting one game per player until I reach 100. Well, this is one of my favorite kinds of wins. Not the kind where you score 42 points and everybody gets to go home and start saying things like, my QB won, and stacked lineup, and I'm a film guy now. This is the other kind. This is the win that feels like a locked door. A win where the other team keeps trying the handle, and it never opens. And the star of the locked door today is Lamar Lathon, because he turns pass protection into panic. Let's set the scene. Ericsson Stadium, 1 p.m. 69,522, 72 degrees, 65% humidity, 6-mile-an-hour wind. Falcons are favored by 3, with a 41 over-under. Atlanta comes in favored. Carolina responds like, cool, we have a brief presentation. And yes, Carolina scores 29, but this isn't really an offense episode. This is a structure episode. This is a game where the defense makes the entire afternoon smaller until Atlanta can't do anything without paying extra. And every time Atlanta tries to borrow time, Lamar Lathon raises the rate. Lamar Lathon, linebacker, 6'3", from Wharton, Texas. Played college ball at the University of Houston. First round pick in 1990, 15th overall. Houston Oilers. He plays 5 years with the Oilers, and then he becomes a Carolina Panther in 1995. And in 1996, this season, he makes the only Pro Bowl of his career. This game, Week 1, 1996, he gets Player of the Week, and he finishes 1996 second in the entire league with 13.5 sacks. So when I tell you this is a pressure episode, I mean it literally. Atlanta's offense today is Jeff George and Jamal Anderson. Jeff George is the quarterback who wants a clean pocket so he can throw with confidence. Jamal Anderson's a running back who wants a crease so he can build momentum. Both of those things require one ingredient, time. And Carolina shows up with a very simple plan. No. Because here's what happens when you remove time. You don't just disrupt. You rewrite math. 2nd and 10 becomes 3rd and 19. 3rd and 6 becomes 4th and 15. And suddenly the offense is no longer calling plays. They're filing forms. And that's where Lamar Lathon lives. It's not just a guy who gets sacks. It's a guy who makes the math ugly. Okay, pressure is an interest rate. And here's what I mean. Every offense is basically alone. You borrow time from the pass rush. You borrow space from the coverage. And you borrow calm from the chaos. And the defense charges you interest. A normal defense charges a normal rate. But when a defense has a pass rush, the rate moves. Now every drop back costs more. Now every route takes too long. Now every third down becomes a negotiation. And Carolina today is basically the bank. And Lamar Lathon is the guy who shows up in the parking lot and says he's just here to talk. And then he puts Jeff George into a spreadsheet. We'll walk this game like a story, not because I'm trying to be dramatic, but because this play-by-play tells you the truth. Carolina opens the game with rhythm. A little Tim Biaka-Batuga, a little short game, Collins looks calm, and then touchdown. That touchdown isn't just points. It's an announcement. Week 1, new season. Stadium buzzing, and Carolina immediately says, we are not negotiating today. Atlanta answers with a 46-yard field goal. So now it's 7-3, and it looks like a normal game. But under the surface, the exits are already being closed. And this is where the pressure theme starts to show itself. A sack doesn't just end a play. A sack changes the mood, because now the quarterback starts hearing footsteps, even when there aren't footsteps. And once that happens, your offense starts to play like it's trying not to make a mistake, which is another way of saying your offense stops being an offense. The second quarter is where the game shows its hand. Carolina adds points, and it's not glamorous. It's grown up. Field goal. Atlanta gets a big play later. A 55-yard completion to Terrence Mathis. That's Atlanta's, oh, okay, here we go moment. And what do they turn it into? A field goal. Now it's 10-6. And for about 10 seconds, if you're Atlanta, you're thinking, All right, we're in it. And Carolina responds with the most disrespectful possible answer. Not a deep shot, not a dance, just more structure. Casey again. And now we get the play that basically ends the suspense. Winslow Oliver runs, he fumbles. Carolina recovers at the Falcons' 1 yard line. That is backbreaking. That's not a turnover. That's a gift basket with a note that says, "I'm sorry for your season." 1 play later, touchdown. Halftime, 20-6. And it feels worse than that, because Atlanta's offense is already playing like it's trying to avoid embarrassment. And that's never a good sign in the second quarter. Let's do the halftime vibe check. Carolina has control. Carolina has rhythm. Carolina has the crowd. And most importantly, Carolina has the one thing that Atlanta can't buy today: time. Now we go to the second half, and this is where Lamar Lathon stamps the thesis on the paper. The third quarter opens. First drive of the second half, Jeff George drops back, and right away, Lamar Lathon gets him. That's not just a sack, that's a message. That's the defense saying, we were not sleeping at halftime, and now Carolina doesn't even need touchdowns, because John Casey is in one of those games where the uprights feel wider. Casey hits from 53. That's the moment where the game turns into a slow closing argument. Atlanta's not trying to win anymore. They're trying to make the final score look polite. And polite is not a strategy. Okay, this is also a John Casey game, because I need to say something that sounds obvious. It isn't obvious when you're watching live. Field goals can be boring, but in a game like this, field goals are also a weapon, because when your defense is dominating, you don't need fireworks, you need deposits. Think of it like this. When a defense is raising the interest rate, your offense doesn't need to take out another risky loan. Your offense just needs to keep making payments on time. No drama. Casey goes 5 for 5. Let's list them like a quiet flex. That's not one lucky kick. That's a full day at the office. And the reason those field goals matter is this. Every time Casey makes one, Atlanta's offense feels the room get heavier. Because now the Falcons aren't just down. They're down with no oxygen. Now they need more possessions. Now they need a touchdown. They need their pass protection to hold. And that's the one thing they don't have. Let's walk the emotional shape. First, 32 yards. That's early structure. That's Carolina saying, we're going to score even if it's not perfect. Then 36 yards. And that's Carolina saying, even when you claw back a little bit, we don't blink. Then the 53. That's the one that feels like a door closing. That's the one where you can hear Atlanta's sideline go quiet, because 53 yards is not boring. 53 yards is a statement. That's a kicker saying, you don't get momentum, you get math. And then 38 and 42 in the fourth quarter. Those are the adult points, the points you score when you're not trying to impress anyone. You're trying to end the game, and that's how a good team closes. And if you're a Panthers fan in 1996, this is exactly what you want to see in week 1. Not chaos, control. So yes, Casey is not the star of the episode, but he's a major supporting character, because this game is the defense tightening the vice and Casey turning the screws. All right, one other thing. If you look at the box score, you'll see something that should scare you. Jamal Anderson, 14 carries, 108 yards. That's the kind of number that makes you think, wait, how did Atlanta only score 6? Here's how. There's a difference between running the ball effectively and running the ball as control. Big rushing totals can be real, but they can also be misleading. Sometimes a team runs well because they hit a couple big ones, and then the rest of the game, they're still trapped, because the trap isn't yards. The trap is down. The trap is third down. The trap is the pocket. Atlanta today is the perfect example. Yes, Jamal Anderson gets yardage, but Atlanta does not turn that yardage into points. And the reason's simple. When they need to throw, they can't throw, because when Jeff George drops back, the interest rate spikes. Now the Falcons aren't playing offense, they're playing survival. Let me say it another way. The run game gave Atlanta moments, but the pass rush took away their future, because sacks don't just steal yards. Sacks steal possessions. Sacks steal first downs. Sacks steal your third down menu. And when your third down menu shrinks, you punt over and over. So Jamal Anderson can have 108 yards, and it still feels like he's running inside a locked room, because those yards aren't giving Atlanta touchdowns. They're giving Atlanta respectability. And respectability is not dangerous. Respectability is what you get when you're trying to cope. Also, when you're losing and you're down multiple scores, a good run can actually work against you. Because it burns clock, it keeps you on schedule, but you don't have enough possessions left to come back anymore. So you're basically jogging calmly towards the end of your own story, which is kind of poetic, but I don't think Atlanta was going for poetic. Now we widen the lens, because if we're honoring Lamar Lathon, you honor the ecosystem. Kevin Green gets 2 sacks, Toy Cook gets a sack, Dwayne Bickett gets a sack. That's 7 total. And that's the thing about the real pass rush. It's contagious. One guy hits the quarterback, and suddenly everybody's sprinting like there's a tip jar at the end. And don't sleep on Sam Mills. Mills finishes with 10 tackles. That's the steady heartbeat. That's the metronome. Because a pass rush is great, but somebody still has to make sure the run game doesn't become a parachute. Here's the thing about pass rush. People talk about sacks like they're dessert, like they're a highlight, like they're nice to have. No, sacks are governance. Sacks are the defense telling the offense, you don't get to do that today. If you don't have a pass rush, you're asking your secondary to be perfect for 4 seconds. Every snap. All game. That's not football, that's a prayer. And today, Carolina doesn't pray. Carolina collects. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. Kerry Collins does his job. He's not perfect, he takes sacks, but he's efficient. 17 for 31, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. And those touchdowns are clean, simple adult football. Mark Carrier from 12 yards, Wesley Walls from 1. And that's the whole story. The offense gave you points, the kicker gave you points, and the defense made the game small. And when the game gets small, the better team wins. Quick nerd corner, I'll keep it human. Expected points is basically, how valuable is your situation? 1st and 10 at the 20 has a value. 3rd and 15 at your own 12 has a different value. Sacks don't just lose yards. They shove you into low-value situations. And when a defense does that all day, the scoreboard starts to feel inevitable. And that's what this game is. Inevitable. So why is this the Lamar Lathon game? Because it's week 1. Because it's a statement. Because he gets 3 sacks. Because he wins player of the week. Because the rest of the season proves it wasn't a fluke. He makes the Pro Bowl. He posts 13.5 sacks. And he becomes one of those defenders that doesn't just beat you. He changes how you call plays. He changes your confidence. He changes your weekend. Pressure's an interest rate, and Lamar Lathon made Atlanta pay. Quick recap. September 1, 1996, Panthers beat the Falcons 29-6. John Casey goes 5 for 5. Kerry Collins throws 2 touchdowns. The defense gets 7 sacks, and Lamar Lathon leads the way with 3. Pressure's an interest rate, and Carolina spent the afternoon raising it. That's episode 6 of the Panthers 100. Lamar Lathon. I'm documenting 1 game per player until I reach 100. Next time, we stay in 1996. Week 5, Panthers at Jaguars. And the lens that day is Greg Cragen, a nose tackle who built an entire career out of being impossible to move.